Hey everyone,
Hello everybody.
welcome to another Travel Therapy Mentor live video. Tonight we're going to be talking about insurance options for travel therapists. This is a topic we've covered before, but we've learned a lot since the last time we went over this. It's probably been a year or a year and a half. I wrote an article about insurance options about 2 years ago. Since then we've learned a lot. We've done more research, so we want to recover that topic. This is a good time to do it because this is right near the end of open enrollment for the marketplace plans, as well as a lot of employer plans. Coming up December 15th is the end of open enrollment. So we want to go over that. We're all dressed up. We just did a Zoom presentation for a student conclave. So just finished that probably 5 minutes ago. So switching gears, talking about insurance. Whitney's going to introduce us, and I'm going to get this shared in a few different groups.
All right, hey everybody. My name is Whitney Aiken,
And I'm Jared Kazaza.
and we are both traveling doctors of physical therapy. Many of you guys may have tuned in the past for our weekly videos. We are the faces behind Travel Therapy Mentor. Every week we do a different video about a different topic on travel therapy, sometimes about finances and sometimes about traveling in general. But we try to educate you on everything that we can about being a travel therapist. Every week we do them on Facebook Live, and then we usually upload them to our YouTube channel and to our podcast. So depending on which platform you prefer to watch us on or listen to us on, be sure to subscribe on that platform. Hit the like button, do all the things. We appreciate your support, and we hope that you enjoy our weekly content. If you are joining us for the very first time this week, thank you and welcome, and we hope that this video is educational.
For the record, I don't like when people say all the things.
Yeah, well, sometimes I can say things like the other day when I said Netflix and chill, even though I used it in a silly manner that didn't mean what it really means. But sometimes I can say what I want to say, Jared. So, anyway, if you are watching live, we'd love if you would leave us a comment, say hello in the comments. If you're watching on the replay, leave a comment and say replay. We'd love if you'd hit the thumbs up button, and also let us know if you're watching, if you're a current travel therapist, if you're somebody who's thinking about doing travel therapy. And let us know kind of, as we talk about all the different insurance options, what have you done in the past for insurance? I've done a poll on this a few different times in our travel therapy groups, asking various people what they do for insurance. So we will talk about that towards the end of the video after we go over all the different options. We are going to discuss what we used to do for insurance versus what we've been doing the last year or so, and versus what we're going to be doing moving forward. And we will tell you the most common things that other travel therapists do for health insurance. So if you are a current travel therapist, let us know in the comments what you do for health insurance, because this is a big concern that a lot of people have. Health insurance can be super confusing, and when you work as like a contract employee like we do, a lot of people really don't understand the way that this can work for you as a healthcare traveler.
Yeah. So again, we're not experts on this. I love to research things, so I've put a lot of time into researching this. We'll just give you the best up-to-date information we have right now, so that you guys can maybe make a more informed choice.
Hi Rosie, hi Armand, hi Nicole, hi Suzanne. Thank you all for joining us live. If anybody else is tuning in live, please leave us a comment. All right. So as we talked about, it can be super confusing. We are not experts. We have done a lot of research via various sources. Most recently, we spoke with a private insurance agent who helped to further educate us on some of the different private plans that are out there. So that's the biggest thing that we've learned that's different from all the stuff we've gone over before.
We actually talked to a few different third-party agents to just get an idea of what's out there in the marketplace.
So we'll be bringing you various information from other sources, but as always, it's super important that you do your own due diligence, that you research what is best for you and your situation as an individual, as a couple, as a family. Don't just rely on what we say. We are physical therapists. We're not experts in any way, but we do get lots of questions about it, especially, those people who are just getting into travel therapy who don't understand how it works at all.
Yeah.
We also get questions from people because it's open enrollment and they're trying to make decisions before that ends. So we hope to be able to answer some of those questions for you guys.
All right. So employer-sponsored plans are the most common route that travel therapists go that we've talked to. I think the majority of people will go through whatever travel company they're working with at the time. Almost every travel company offers some sort of health insurance plan. I think I only know of one that does not. There might be more out there, but the majority of them have employer-sponsored plans. Those are usually going to be cheaper, but there are some limitations there because you're only covered during a contract and short gaps between contracts if you're taking your next one through the same company. So that can lead to some hassles and some issues with continuity of health coverage. So there are situations where people will not want to go with that option.
So the pros here are that they're usually the cheapest, because when you are employed by someone, just like when you're employed at a permanent staff job, the employer helps to pay part of the premium. So you don't have to pay the whole premium. They offset some of the costs. It's the same thing when you work through a travel agency. So that's one of the pros. It's one of the most convenient because they have a benefits department that can just sort of say, hey, here's our benefits package, click this link, enroll, fill out this form, and they help you through the whole process. Some of the cons, like Jared said, is you're really only eligible while you are on contract. So the part where it gets tricky is between contracts, or if you switch to a different agency, if you take more time off, those kinds of things are when it gets tricky. We get questions about whether or not the company's insurance is good. I would say the majority of the time, the companies offer good coverage. There are minimum requirements these days due to the Affordable Care Act for what health insurance plans are required to provide. Now, you are going to see some variations in the cost, the weekly or the monthly cost. Typically, as a travel therapist, it's going to come out weekly. You will see some variations in the deductible, how high the deductible is versus the premium. But typically, most travel agencies and most employers are going to offer you different tiers and different levels. So you would just want to ask to look at the benefits option, and you can even ask this in advance before you ever start working with a travel therapy company if that's something that's very important to you, learning about their health insurance options. I know it's very important to some people that have families, or if you have chronic health conditions, you might want to really take a close look at the PDF of their benefits packages and look at all the different options before you commit to working with that company.
Yeah, there's some people that is like the top of their list of when they're choosing companies is what options do they have? Is the insurance coverage good enough for me and my family? So yeah, you can always interview companies and recruiters, and that's one of the questions you ask is about health insurance. Is that going to be a good option for you? Should you pursue other avenues?
So one of the frustrating parts about being a travel therapist is the potential to lose coverage or have a lapse in coverage if you take time off between jobs, which quite often happens whether you just want to take time off or maybe you can't always line up your next contract right away. The majority of the time, the travel agencies, if you always work with the same agency, will cover you up to 2 weeks, sometimes up to 4 weeks between jobs. And a lot of therapists work year-round as travelers, so it's not a big deal. If they always stay with the same company, they will always keep their health insurance. However, if you do take longer periods off, or if you decide to switch to a different agency because maybe they have a job that your current agency doesn't have, or they pay better, or whatever it might be, people are very concerned about having a lapse in coverage. This is especially concerning for people that have frequent use of their medical insurance and they want to try to meet their deductible throughout the year. If you switch between insurances throughout the year, you're never able to really have an opportunity to meet your deductible, which is a bummer. And not to mention, it can just be a hassle to have to switch insurances throughout the year. So that's why we're going to go over some of the other options that you might want to consider.
Yeah, and those lapse in coverage could seem like a big deal, but there are situations where it's not as big of a deal as you would think. And one of those is COBRA coverage for short-term insurance between contracts. So say you're going to go with a different company and you're going to have like a 6-week gap in there. You could always use COBRA to cover that gap. And the great thing about COBRA is that it's applied retroactively. So let's say you have a 6-week gap. You're going home to spend time with family, and you're changing companies once you come back. So you went from travel company A to travel company B for the next contract. Normally you wouldn't be covered for that 6-week period, but when you leave travel contract or travel company A, they should give you the option to extend your benefits through COBRA. That is a legal requirement for the company. And the downside of COBRA is that it's more expensive, but the very great aspect of COBRA is that you only have to pay for it if you use it, because it can be applied retroactively. So let's say that whole 6-week period, nothing, you didn't have any incidents, you didn't have any doctor's appointments scheduled, anything like that, then you could just go without signing up for COBRA. But say that something happened, you developed an illness, you broke a bone, you went, something like that, you could apply it retroactively and it would cover you from the time you left that job all the way through until you start the new one. So that is kind of like I guess a loophole a little bit for us as travel therapists, that it can cover you retroactively. So you really only have to pay for it if you use it, which is a very good thing.
There's some people that are not comfortable with doing it that way. We did it that way in the past, where we just forwent, basically. We forgoed. How do you say that in the past tense? We did not sign up for it.
Foregone? Yeah, I think it's foregone.
I don't know. We didn't sign up for it, and we just basically realized that if we had needed to, we would have signed up retroactively. Now, there's some people who are more risk averse, where they were like, well, what if I was in like a major car accident and then I was in a coma, and then I can't be there to sign the papers.
There are risks for sure.
To do it retroactively. So some people are just more proactive and would rather go ahead and sign up for the COBRA for that gap. That's fine. Or if you know that you're planning to schedule a doctor's appointment or something during your time off between jobs, then you would want to proactively do your COBRA sign up. But if you're just like, I'm probably not going to need health insurance for those 2-3 weeks, I'm just going to forgo it.
Yeah, and one of the hassles with doing that, well, that's what we did. For our first 3 years, we took company insurance, any gaps. We had COBRA there if we needed it. We never needed it. But a downside of that is that almost everyone, us included, we try to schedule appointments between contracts because that's the most convenient time. Instead of taking time off during a contract to schedule a doctor's appointment, dentist appointment, those kind of things, you schedule it between contracts. Well, if you're relying on COBRA and you're only going to use it retroactively if you need it, then you can't really do that. You could pay the full premium for COBRA that whole gap if you want to, but it's just a little bit more hassle. It can be a little bit more cost.
And because of that, we tried to do a lot of our doctor's appointments while we were on assignment, but that always meant that we were switching doctors and having to just see a doctor locally, which was kind of annoying, and not a lot of people want to do that. So again, there's some pros and cons there of going with the health insurance of the company. And that's why a lot of people, even if there are other benefits to switching companies, some people will chase down whoever has the highest pay package or the best job for them, and they'll switch back and forth between companies. There are some people who just really don't want to deal with the hassle of switching insurances. So regardless of whether the pay package is going to be slightly higher with another company, they'll just always stay with the same agency. And that's a valid concern, and I get that. So that's something to take into account when we're considering the travel therapy company insurance.
Yep.
Real quick before we move on to talking about the next insurance, I see a bunch of you guys are on live, so I'm just going to give a shout out to those of you that are watching. Hi Crystal, hi Nick, hi Kaylee, hi Heather, hey Kristen, hey AJ, hey Cole, hi Marianne, hi Allie, hi Lisa, hi Kenya, hi Kelsey, hi Brianna, hi Chelsea, hi Rosa, hi Jessica, hi Kimberly, hey Kaylee, hi Michaela, hi Nathan, hi Krista, hi Blake. There's a lot of you. Hi Katie, hi Chandler. Thank you all so much for joining. Again, if you are watching live or you're watching on the replay, we would love if you'd hit the thumbs up button if you're learning something from this video and getting value out of it. And we would love if you'd leave a comment and let us know who you are. Are you a current travel therapist, or are you someone who's thinking about doing travel therapy? Let us know in the comments.
Yep, and we'll cover any questions or comments at the end. We'll go back through.
Yeah, if you have any questions, let us know. So the next one we're going to talk about, besides the company insurance, is Affordable Care Act marketplace plans.
Yeah, so for the last couple of years, this is the option we've gone with. You can sign up through the ACA or the healthcare.gov marketplace for plans. How good the plans are depends on what state you're in and what you're looking for in terms of insurance. There's usually several options for each state. Some are much better than others. The big benefit of going with the marketplace plan is that there are situations where you can be eligible for subsidies based on your income, and they can make these plans very affordable. The downside of going with one of these plans is that while you're on assignment, if you're offered insurance through your travel company, which almost everyone is going to be, you're not eligible for those subsidies. And in that case, if you don't get any of the income subsidies, the plans can be pretty expensive. So when we're not on assignment and assuming that our income is low enough that we qualify for subsidies, we go with the marketplace plans, especially if it's going to be a 2 or 3 month gap or longer. It makes sense to sign up there for us, get a discounted plan due to income subsidies, and go that way. But if we are going to be on contract and we're taking mostly back-to-back contracts with short gaps, then that's when we would choose more the company insurance with COBRA as a backup plan between contracts.
Yeah, so like Jared said, you will not qualify for subsidies if you are offered an employer-sponsored plan. That's one of the questions they ask you. They say, have you been offered health insurance through your employer? If so, they won't cut you a break at all on the price, so it can be quite expensive. However, when you're not working for your company and you have lost healthcare coverage through them per se, then you can qualify for subsidies. And a lot of people look at it like, well, aren't subsidies for somebody who doesn't make a lot of money? Well, this goes back to where as travelers, we get paid, differently than that of a permanent therapist. So it's actually based on your AGI, your adjusted gross income. And because only some of our pay is taxable, on our tax returns, our AGI can actually be a lot lower, especially if you're like us, where you only take contracts some part of the year and you don't work continuously throughout the year. Your AGI can be quite low, allowing you to qualify for these subsidies.
The subsidy cutoff too for a single individual is $54,000. I'm not sure what it is for couples or families, but $54,000 for an individual.
So there are some instances in which some therapists would rather actually just be on an ACA marketplace plan, otherwise known as like an Obamacare plan, throughout the year, regardless of whether they were on or off contract. Even though it might be a little more expensive, there are some people who would want to keep it because they have health problems where they need to see doctors frequently, because they do want to be able to meet their deductible throughout the year, because they have a family who they want to have continuous coverage by the same healthcare plan throughout the year. Those would be some reasons why, even though it might be slightly more expensive to maintain an Obamacare or an ACA marketplace plan continuously throughout the year, you might choose that route if you fall into some of those categories.
Yep.
So those are some instances for that. Or you might be like us, where you just choose to do the employer sponsored insurance while you're on contract and the ACA marketplace plan when you're not on contract.
Yeah, and the important thing there is to remember that it doesn't apply, the subsidies don't apply while you're on contract. If you guys read the article I put out 2 years ago, I got some questions because at the time I had not done enough research into how those plans worked, and I thought that the subsidies applied no matter what based on your AGI. And in that case, it would have been a very good option for almost all travelers. But due to the fact that the subsidies only apply while you're not offered insurance through your employer, that really changes things. So it can make it not as good of an option as it first appears to be.
And we have updated, I just recently updated that article, some new information on it. So I will link to that in the comments of this video. Or you can find it on our website at traveltherapymentor.com. It's just called, I think, healthcare options or health insurance options for travelers. So I'll link to that in case you guys want to read all of this in a written form, kind of a summary of what we're going to talk about tonight. One more thing I want to mention is sometimes there are limitations when you're going through an ACA marketplace plan about which states you are allowed to see healthcare providers. Now, I don't know all the details on this, but I do know that there are some plans that restrict you to only get coverage in your state. So if you're from, whatever state, you can only see doctors and your insurance only works in that state. So if you decided to keep your marketplace plan year-round while you were traveling around to different states, you might not actually be able to use it in another state.
My understanding is that's not all plans. It's only some of the marketplace plans. So the important thing there would be to ask, talk to a representative, or search the fine print of those plans. Make sure that it covers you in all states instead of just your home state, because that's going to be vital as a traveler.
Super important. So make sure to check that out. All right, so the next one that we want to talk about would be private health insurance plans, which we have recently learned a little bit more about because we got in touch with a few private health insurance agents to learn a little bit more about what they offer to decide if those would be good options for us.
Yeah, initially I was very negative on these third-party plans. That original article that I wrote, I was like, I don't think this makes sense for most people. The reason I was negative is because I was under the impression when I wrote that pretty much all travelers are going to be eligible for subsidies through the marketplace. And if you're eligible for a subsidy through the marketplace, that makes those plans way cheaper than third-party plans. So in that case, why would you ever take a third-party plan? Well, now, knowing that those subsidies don't apply when you're offered insurance through the travel company, now I can definitely understand that there are situations where a third-party plan makes sense, and it actually might make sense for a lot of you guys.
Yeah, so sometimes the problem with some of these private health insurance plans is sometimes they can be more expensive, like Jared said, as compared with a marketplace plan if you qualify for subsidies. But during those instances when you don't qualify for subsidies, either your income is too high already, especially for those of you that might be working a permanent job for part of the year and then transitioning to a travel job, well then your AGI for that first part of the year would have been really high. Or if you have another source of income besides your travel therapy income, and your AGI is really high and you don't qualify for subsidies, then the private insurance plan may be cheaper. Or in the instances where you are on contract and you do not qualify for the subsidies, then across the spectrum of the year, the private insurance plan might be cheaper for you.
Yeah, and some of you guys might not know, but there was a situation, I think it was maybe, I don't know, 5 or 6 years, where if you didn't have a minimum amount of coverage from health insurance, you had to pay a penalty when you filed your taxes. And that was the individual mandate, I guess, the penalty. And that has since been taken away as of last year. So there are situations where if you're young and healthy and you're okay with a higher deductible plan, and maybe foregoing some of the benefits of like a marketplace plan, where you can get cheaper insurance coverage and you don't have to pay that penalty any longer.
So that's a big difference from when Jared first wrote that article and we
Yep.
first did our video. So one benefit here of doing a private insurance plan would be that you could keep the same plan all year and it would be the same cost all year, regardless, like I said, regardless of whether you're on contract or off contract. This would help you if you're in the situation where you don't want to deal with the hassle of switching plans throughout the year. You want to have continuous coverage for you and or your family. You want to be able to meet your deductible by keeping the same plan throughout the year and paying into it. So those would be some benefits there. In addition, these plans cover all 50 states. So you're not going to have to deal with the difficulties that you could run into with a marketplace plan where it doesn't cover you in all 50 states. So that's a big pro.
Yeah,
there.
and that might, same thing with the marketplace plans. That might not be all of them, but the people we talk to, the insurance agents, their plans covered all 50 states. So just make sure to ask that question. If you're talking to any insurance salesman, I guess, that is familiar with travel nursing or travel healthcare, travel therapy, they should understand that, and they should only be presenting you options that cover all 50 states anyway.
Right, and with that said, if you guys want to get in touch with a private insurance agent to learn a little bit more about these private plans, we're going to give you just some overview based on what our understanding is, but it would be really important for you to speak with a private insurance agent to better understand if one of these plans would work for you. It was really interesting because we had never looked into it before and we did not know how it works really to work with an insurance agent. So what I found out was it's kind of the same as like when we talk to travel therapy recruiters. You can talk to a private insurance agent completely for free. You don't have to pay them any money, regardless of whether you decide to go with one of their plans or not. They can actually help you to understand all of your different options and tell you, compare their private insurance plans versus a marketplace plan versus your company insurance plan, and they can help you to understand which one would be the best for you. And they will tell you if you don't qualify for one of theirs for one reason or another, they might encourage you to do something else. They do free phone consultations. We talked to a couple of them for free without signing up for anything. And the only way that they actually make money is off a commission. If you were to take or sign up for one of their health insurance plans, they would get a commission directly from the insurance company. Kind of like when you work with a recruiter, you could talk to recruiters forever and not take any jobs with them, and then they would only get a commission if you did take a job with them. So I like that because it's commitment free, it's a relatively painless process, and they know a lot more than we do. So if you do want to get in touch with one of the private insurance agents that we talk to, just send us a message after the video and we can give you their information so you can talk to them and find out what's a good choice for you if you're thinking about going that route.
Yeah, and I was actually really surprised with some of these plans. They, compared to the marketplace plans that we've had for the last 2 years, without subsidies, we do not anticipate being able to have subsidies for this coming year based on our AGI and everything. Based on not having subsidies, these third-party plans were all around better than the marketplace plans. The options that we had, they were cheaper, lower deductible, seems like they covered more. There was a very little downside once we talked to a few different agents on going with a third-party plan compared to a marketplace plan without subsidies.
Yeah, so some of the pros there, like Jared said, is they tend to have better coverage from what we understand. We didn't know a ton about like the PPO versus HMO, but I was doing some research. Most of the ones I think they offer for the private insurance plans are PPOs, which are supposed to be better than HMOs in terms of your coverage, and the deductible was lower than the one that we've been on the marketplace. So that was good, but it is extremely important that we talk about some of the limitations. The huge way that they're able to make these plans affordable and provide all these benefits like lower deductibles is you can only qualify for them if you are healthy. So
Yeah.
if you have pre-existing conditions for these private insurance plans, they can exclude you.
Or they can charge you a higher rate. And that is in stark contrast to the marketplace plans, where all they ask you is your age and if you're a smoker or not. Those are pretty much the only two things they take into consideration there. So it doesn't matter any pre-existing conditions or anything, you're going to be approved for a marketplace plan, whereas through a third-party plan you may not be.
Yeah, so it's extremely important that you understand that these plans, the reason why they're able to offer better rates, lower deductibles, all these, better coverage is because they only cover people who are relatively healthy. They ask you some questions about your health conditions. They ask you your height and your weight so they can determine your BMI, which, like it or not, whether or not BMI is super accurate, those are the numbers that they use. So they are going to look at your height and your weight, your age, your past medical history, all that stuff. So they might be a good option for some of you who are young, healthy, don't have any medical problems, so forth and so on. But again, you just have to look into it, talk to one of the insurance agents to see if they are the best option for you. The other thing is, according to one of the agents that we spoke with, there are certain states that do not allow you to get private healthcare insurance outside the marketplace. I wrote down,
It was like 15 states, right?
I think it was 30 states do allow it and 20 states do not allow it. So don't quote me 100%, but this is basically what I was told, and I'm just going to repeat what I was told, but you really should look into it yourself if you want to know if you're eligible. So from what I was told, these states do not allow you to do a private insurance plan. The states that do not allow you, if you live in New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Massachusetts, Maine, Rhode Island, Delaware, Hawaii, Alaska, Washington, Oregon, California, Idaho, New Mexico, North Dakota, South Dakota, Minnesota, Wisconsin, New Hampshire, and Vermont.
Yeah.
Apparently those are the ones that do not allow you, but if your home state is in one of those 20 that I just read off, don't just take my word for it. Like, definitely still go look into it yourself, but that's what I was told.
Yeah, I mean, if, for example, your state, if you're in one of those states, there's no downside of you talking to a third-party agent and just making sure that's the case, because if they can't sell you a third-party plan anyway, it's not like they're going to make money off of you. They'll just do a free consultation, and you won't be eligible for it.
And the consultation was super quick. It was like 5 or 10 minutes. Like, they just asked some basic questions and was like, yeah, these might be a good option for you, or no, they won't be a good option for you. And then they'll just let you know, no, you're probably better off to go with your company insurance or a marketplace plan, etc. So
Yep.
that's a little bit about private insurance plans. Again, if you would like to talk to one of the insurance agents that we talked to, just let us know and we can put you in touch with them. All right, so the next one that we want to talk about as a potential healthcare option for you would be Health Share Ministries.
Yeah, so there's a lot of polarization around Health Share Ministries from my experience and the research I did. There are some people that think they're great. They've had no issues with it, and then you can find a lot of horror stories about people having large expenses that were not covered. The important thing to remember with these health share ministries is they're not really insurance. They don't have to follow all the same rules that an insurance company would. That doesn't mean they won't follow those rules and they won't cover you, but they're not obligated to. They only cover people that are subscribed to, usually it's a Christian-based religion. They only cover you if you answer no to certain questions. I can't remember what all they include, but things like drug use. I think they have something about like birth control. I can't remember. But there's several things that they will exclude you for if you answer yes.
I think there's limitations on health factors too. Like, I
Yeah.
think you have to be pretty healthy. Because it's similar to the private plans, they're able to keep their costs lower by only covering people who are classified as healthy.
Yeah.
So as Jared said, they are mostly Christian health share ministries. I don't know if there's any other religious organizations that do it, but most of the ones we've heard of are Christian based.
Yeah, and basically what they do is, obviously based on the selection criteria, they're opting for healthier people, so they can usually offer you coverage for lower cost. Everyone's paying in. When you pay in, if you have a condition or some medical issue arise, they pay you out money. Normally, when you're paying at the healthcare provider, you're paying out of pocket, and then they're reimbursing you for that cost. So it's just a whole different system. it's not really something that we were interested in. I know some travelers do it, and they pay less, and it really just depends on, a lot of factors there for you. Are you a Christian? Are you able to meet the criteria to even qualify for their plans? And do you want to take the potential risk that if you had some major issue that was very expensive, that they wouldn't cover it?
Yeah, so it's an alternative to traditional healthcare coverage, health insurance coverage. There is no guarantee that they will pay out your claim. However, there are some people that this works out just fine for them. They are healthy, they are willing to take the risk, they don't anticipate any major medical costs. They do agree to meet all the strict criteria regarding the Christian values and your health status and all that stuff. There are a lot of people who really like these plans, who that works for them. So definitely, if that's something that you would be interested in, do more research on that, but just realize it is considered an alternative to traditional healthcare coverage. So it's not exactly insurance.
Yep.
So those are the basic ones that we wanted to cover: employer-sponsored insurance plans, marketplace Affordable Care Act plans, private health insurance plans, and health share ministries. And then we also gave a little tidbit on what COBRA is and how that COBRA can work with your employer-sponsored plan.
Yeah. So in general, for most travelers, young, no kids, traveling on their own, I think it makes the most sense to usually go through the contract company while you're on assignment, and then between contracts, if you're staying with the same company, then they'll cover you for that gap. If you're switching companies, you have COBRA there that you can either sign up for preemptively or just have it there as a backup if you need it and sign up retroactively. If you're someone like us that's taking longer periods of time off, then it might make sense to go with a marketplace plan, depending on the situation, if you're eligible for subsidies, or go with a third-party plan. And then there are some travelers that it'll make sense to go through a health share ministry that way.
Yeah, and just to recap kind of what we've done through our years as travel therapists, for our first 3 years as travel therapists, we were working more or less back-to-back contracts. We might take off obviously a weekend sometimes between jobs, or a week or two between jobs, and we did occasionally switch companies, although most of the time we were with the same agency. We did occasionally switch companies. So for those first 3 years, we did the company insurance and just would have relied retroactively on COBRA, but we never really signed up for insurance between contracts. When we got to year 3 and we started taking off more time, as many of you guys may know, we don't work full time anymore. We travel for fun quite a bit throughout the year, so we were taking off like 6+ months, and we realized that we couldn't rely on COBRA or retroactive COBRA for 6+ months, so we started doing travel therapy company insurance while on contract, marketplace when off contract. During those first couple years that we were doing it that way, really I guess it was like 1.5 years or so that we did it that way, or about 2 years, we did qualify for subsidies based on our AGI, and that worked really well for us. We were getting ready to do the same thing this year and just kind of keep trucking along with our marketplace plan when we were off contract. However, because it is open enrollment right now, we just wanted to check into some other options to find out if there were other options that were better for us. And we actually just recently, after talking to some of these private healthcare insurance brokers, decided that we are going to go with the private insurance instead this next year and see how that goes for us, because for a few reasons we were able to find out how affordable it would actually be for us, because we're young, healthy, don't have any medical problems. It was about the same as our marketplace plan.
It was actually less than what my marketplace plan would have been.
Yeah, especially because this next year our AGI is going to go up a little bit, and we wouldn't qualify for as many subsidies via the marketplace. So this is really going to be a cheaper option for us, and we think it's going to have better coverage. It does have a lower deductible, our private plan that we're going to go on, than our marketplace plan. So moving forward, we're going to try doing just private health insurance plan throughout the year, regardless of whether we're on contract or not, and we'll see how that goes over this next year. But for right now, I think that's going to be our plan.
Yeah, and a quick thing to mention there is if you're taking a third-party plan, there are situations where you might be able to negotiate with your travel company to get higher pay or more money in your pay package if you're not taking their insurance. They're not supposed to do that technically. I think I read some regulation where an employer is not supposed to give you additional incentive to not take their health insurance plan, but there are some that will do it. I guess that's kind of on them if they get in trouble for that. But always something to ask about. If you have a third party plan, if you can get additional pay for not taking their insurance, then that's a good thing to do.
So we want to go through some questions that you guys have. We've had a few questions throughout the video. If you have more questions and you're watching live, go ahead and ask them now in the comments. We'll go through all the questions, and then at the end we'll kind of just recap, give a little bit of a summary of everything we talked about. And if you're watching later on the replay, also feel free to leave questions and we can go back and answer them later.
All right, we're going to start at the top.
Okay.
Hey, Rosie. Hey, Suzanne.
Suzanne says, great topic. Looking forward to hearing your opinion is on this.
Rosa says, good evening, guys. Hey, Nick. So Crystal says, is there a time limit for Cobra sign up? I believe that it's 60 days. So if you have more than a 60-day gap and you don't sign up, I don't believe that you can sign up retroactively after 60 days. So I think 2 months basically is the limit.
Which for the most part, for most travelers, that's going to be plenty. I don't think there's a lot of travelers that take off more than 2 months, except for us and like a handful of people that take off more time than that, in which case Cobra would not be a good option for you. But for the short gaps between, whether it's a weekend or a week or a month, I think Cobra's a good option.
Yep. Suzanne says, may I ask how much per month you've paid for coverage during contract with company based? It varies depending on the company. I've paid as little as, when we first started traveling, I chose a catastrophic plan through the company that we were working with, and I think I was paying like $50 a month, somewhere around there. But I think we've paid up to maybe $150 to $200 a month, but we're usually choosing the lowest coverage and usually looking for a high deductible plan if possible.
And that's for us as individuals. We're not married, so we each individually have our own health insurance plan. So as an individual, I would say my coverage is usually about $150 a month or so on the company insurance, but each company is going to vary and it depends on which plan you pick.
Yep.
Okay. Rosie says, do you need a certain type of plan in order to qualify for an HSA?
Yes, it has to be a high deductible plan. I can't remember what the cutoff is where they consider it a high deductible plan or not, but in addition to it needing to be a high deductible plan, it also has to specifically say that it's eligible for an HSA. So when you're looking at the different options, if there's one that is eligible for HSA, it will tell you that in the description. So just make sure if you want to use an HSA that you're finding one of those. That's usually a requirement, or very top of the list thing for me as well. So
yeah, we always did an HSA high deductible plan in the past. I think that the one that I just did through the private insurance does not offer that. Allie says, my third-party plan for 2021 is way better and cheaper than my marketplace plan option. I have also taken out short-term catastrophic plans before between assignments. So that's good to know. We have not looked into those short-term catastrophic plans before, Allie, so if you have any more information you'd like to share on that, we'd love to hear it. That is not something we've researched.
yeah, I think it can make a lot of sense, those catastrophic options. If you're young and healthy and you just need it short-term, that's probably a pretty good choice between contracts. If you're willing to take the risk, of course.
Nick says that Allie should get a deal on insurance because she has a sweet Australian accent. I don't know if that's a good rule, but I'm sure that Allie does have a sweet Australian accent.
Brianna says, I just got a third-party plan for my husband for New York today, so I'm assuming it's okay since they sold it to me. Yeah, so it could just be the agents that we talk to. Maybe there are some plans or some agents that can sell insurance options for those states. That might not be across the board thing. So yeah, I'm sure if you were sold a plan that it works.
Yeah, that's a good point. It could just be the company that we talk to that doesn't cover those states. I'm not really sure on that. Allie says, Nick, there's no discounts as you get to my age, not even when you're very healthy. Age is definitely a factor. I know it does go up as we get older because it's more likely that we could have health problems as we get older.
Rosie said, also, do you utilize an HSA? Yeah, for the last, I think, 3 or 4 years, Whitney and I both maxed out our HSAs. So yeah, I mean, if you're eligible for an HSA, I think it's crazy to not take advantage of it. It's triple tax advantaged, so there's really no downside at all to putting money in there and using that for healthcare expenses. You just save money on your federal and state taxes by doing that. And in some cases, you even save on FICA taxes.
All right, Blake says, if I utilize a health savings account on one contract and insurance plan, that also offers. Oh wait, if I use it on one contract and then switch to a different travel agency, the next contract that also offers an HSA, or I get a private coverage, do you know if I can, if it automatically funds into the same account? Are you familiar with this?
Yeah, so when you sign up through a high deductible plan through your employer, so through the travel company, they almost always have a specific HSA associated with that account. It might be something like Benefit Wallet or Fidelity or one of those companies that specifically it automatically goes to. Just because that is the option doesn't mean you have to use it, but it's kind of crazy not to use it. The reason being, if you have the employer take the money directly out of your paycheck and put it into an HSA, then you don't have to pay FICA taxes on that money. On the other hand, if you open a separate HSA that you fund on your own, you do have to pay FICA taxes on that money, if that makes sense. And you can always roll over money from one plan to another. So if you have a situation where you have a different HSA, you switch companies, the new company has a new HSA, I would say fund that new one, and when you leave that company, roll it over into whichever one you like better, and you'll save on taxes that way.
So to answer your question, I don't think it is automatically going to fund into the same account. You're going to have to roll one into the other. You may end up with two and you can just roll them together later. It's not that difficult of a process. Same thing with 401k. We get that question a lot about benefits. Is it, bad to switch companies? Because what if you open a 401k with this company and a 401k with this company? It's just like having multiple bank accounts. It's not a big deal. At some point in the future, you can roll them together or roll them into a different one. But
yeah, and a question that I got, actually, I think it was yesterday or the day before, that relates to this about HSAs is that, let's say you have an HSA plan and then you switch insurances and you go with a different plan that doesn't offer an HSA. The person was asking, can I fund my HSA with that first company or the first insurance plan I had? So say you only have that for January and February. Could you fund that for the whole year and then go with a cheaper option that doesn't have an HSA? And no, you can't. The reason being, when you file your taxes, it asks you which year you were covered by an HSA, and then it prorates the amount that you're able to deduct on your taxes from, so say it was only 2 out of 12 years, you're only able to contribute 1/6 of the total contribution amount because you were only covered for 2 of the months. If that makes sense.
All right, let's see if we have any more questions.
How are HSA, Rosie said, how are HSA funds invested? You choose how they're invested or if they're invested at all. Most HSAs have an option where you can either invest the money or just keep it in basically like a savings account type thing for medical expenses. So depending on your situation, if you have medical expenses, if you think that you're going to use the funds, you may choose to not invest it at all, or they'll have a variety of fund options available. My current HSA is through Fidelity, and you pretty much have access to any of Fidelity funds or any ETFs or things that you might want to invest in, so you can choose.
Yeah, you'll usually get a debit card with your HSA, so you can use it if you'd like to use it throughout the year for all of your medical expenses. Even things, I'm pretty sure, like going to the pharmacy and buying medications there, or getting a prescription, that sort of thing, or paying co-pays or things like that. You could use your debit card, in which case you wouldn't want to have the money invested, you would just want to have it in that account. However, we've kind of used it as like just an additional savings brokerage account, retirement account, if you will. Kind of like an additional 401k. So we do allocate our funds to different funds within there. You just kind of log in the same way you would with your 401k account and decide which funds you want to allocate it to.
Yep.
So is that all the questions that we got? All right. So again, if you have any more questions, either now or if you're watching later on the replay, feel free to leave them in the comments. We will go back and answer them, or you can always send us a message with additional questions on this topic. After the video is over, I'm going to link to the article that we wrote on this topic so you can read it in more detail if you'd like. But again, just realize we are not experts in this. We have tried to do a thorough amount of research for ourselves and help educate you and point you guys in the right direction, but it's really important that you do your own research and decide which choice is right for you.
Yeah, and depending on your situation, what works best for us may not work for you at all. So yeah, do your own research. If you guys enjoyed this video, if you got value out of it, please like the video, comment, let us know. We always appreciate the feedback.
Absolutely. And again, if you guys would be interested in getting in touch with an insurance agent that we've talked to before, just send us a private message and we can give you their contact information. Again, they do free phone calls. They can run a quote for you really fast and let you know whether a private third-party insurance plan would be an option for you or not.
Yeah.
And if not, there's no harm done because they can always just direct you back to say, no, you're probably going to be better off in your situation because of your age or your height or your weight or your health status or your state that you live in or your situation. They might say it's better for you just to go with the company insurance or a marketplace plan. But if you are eligible for one of their plans, they can run a quote for you and then you can compare it side by side. I talked to the agent like 3 different times on the phone with a couple of days in between, and I just had his quote in front of me and then I ran it next to my marketplace quote to compare, look at the deductibles and all that before I decided to move forward. And honestly, they work with so many people, they have so many clients. Just like we always tell people with recruiters, there's really no harm done. A lot of people don't want to talk to a recruiter or an agent because they're like, oh, I'm gonna feel so bad like if I don't end up going with them. They don't care. You know what?
Yeah, they understand.
They have to do these free consultations to try to find business. That's just part of what they do. So don't be afraid to talk to one and utilize their free phone call option if you want to find out more about your different options. Same thing with recruiters. If you guys are new to travel therapy and you're thinking about getting into travel therapy, feel free to reach out to us and ask us which recruiters that we recommend. We can give you the contact information. You can talk to them for free. It's no big deal if you decide not to do it or you decide not to work with them, but you have to explore your options or else you just won't even know where to start.
Yep. All right. Thanks, guys. See you next week.
All right, bye.
Bye.